This is the Roots and All podcast, and I'm your host, Sarah Wilson. Join me as I talk about all aspects of gardening with some of the top horticulturists from around the world. In this episode, I'm joined by Sam Evans, a horticulture student whose dissertation took him to Africa to explore the remarkable world of Keyhole gardens, circular compost-fed growing systems, helping communities tackle food insecurity in some of the harshest growing conditions on Earth. We talk about how these ingenious gardens work, the social and environmental benefits they bring, and why this simple idea might have lessons for all of us as we face a changing climate and rethink how we grow food closer to home.
I'm Sam, and I'm from Sheffield, and I started sort of in horticulture when I was 15, and I started to work at a plant nursery, which is just down the road from me in Sheffield. And I just really enjoyed working there, and it was such a difference from school. So I sort of like found my thing at 15. So then I continued there for a little bit, like in summer, and then went to college at Aston Bryan, did horticulture, and then finished that, and then thought, right, I don't feel like I know enough. I don't feel like I've learned enough. I got looking online and found a uni course at Nottingham Trent that was horticulture. And I would never, ever thought I'd ever go to uni. Like, I'm not academic by any means. And I didn't have like the UCAS points or anything. So I just rang them up and said, can I join? And they said, as long as you work hard and you have the right attitude to uni, like, we don't have a problem with it. So I went to uni and I joined uni, and then in the first week, I just ran home. I just got on the bus, got on the train, and turned up at my dad's doorstep. And my dad probably thought, what on earth are you doing? So you're in a bit of uni. Because in that first week, I just thought it was just not for me at all. It was just so far removed from like what I've been doing at the nursery, or like landscaping and the maintenance I've been doing. But one of my lecturers rang me up and said, Sam, get your ass back here. And I did go back and stuck it out. And I always knew in third year, you've got to do your dissertation, which is a big piece of work. And it's your own like research and stuff. And I know that I struggle with the research and the academic work. So I knew it had to be something super interesting. So that's why I chose Keyhole Gardens. And the idea came from a family friend of ours runs a charity out in Lesotho, and that's to do with Keyhole Gardens. So I knew that if I picked that as my dissertation topic, I could get travelling. It's something to do with horticulture, and it's to do with people as well, which that's like a passion of mine as well. So it kind of ticked them three main boxes, which helped me push through to do the academic work and the research. So that's kind of how I came across Keyhole Gardens, and that's, where I really got stuck into it, really.
So tell me about your dissertation, tell me about what the project was that you chose to investigate.
So in Lesotho, they have these things called Keyhole Gardens, which are, imagine a raised bed. Over here, would you make it out of sleepers or something? But over there, they have like these raised beds, they're circular, and they're made out of stones and bricks and like even breeze blocks. And you have like almost like a slice of cake put out that goes to the middle of this circle. And then in the middle, there's like a basket made out of like chicken wire. And in that basket, you fill it with food scraps and just any like organic waste. So anything from the kitchen that's like degradable. And then around that, between that basket and the breeze blocks or stones or whatever, you fill that with different layers of soil. A lot of the time they use like plant matter, cardboard, and just different layers of anything you can find really that's like organic. And that creates like a really sort of nutrient-rich sort of space, like quite intense in such a small space. And then you put grey water or wastewater into that central composting basket in the middle, and then the water seeps out. And it's just a really good way of sort of keeping nutrients, water locked in, and then you can grow crops in there all year round. Because in Lesotho, they have such like harsh weather. Like it can be really hot one day, and then the next day it can be bouncing it down with hail or rain. And they have a lot of wind as well, which is like a lot of soil erosion. So things dry out very quickly. So these Keyhole Gardens, they're really, really good at sort of just keeping a protected space to grow crops for like households throughout the whole year. So they do save lives. And that might sound like an over-exaggeration, but it's true. They do save lives, and they're providing food for households which would struggle to obtain food a lot of the time.
But is this something that's been used traditionally in the communities, or was it something that was developed as an idea by a group or a certain person?
So it was developed in about like the early 2000s by, I think it was Safe, to help households better their position in terms of food security. So they're still quite early, but like, I feel like they still need to be pushed a lot more, but they're definitely making an impact because we did see a lot when we were out in Lesotho, especially working with charities like Africa's Gift, who I went out with, and also like the development trusts that they have out in Africa. So I worked with one called the Malaya Development Trust, and they push sort of keyhole gardens to a lot of households in their area. And they also provide like training and stuff on like pests and diseases, and also how to get the most out of your keyhole garden, and just in terms of like using shade netting to protect it even further, and like the correct watering, the correct nutrients in there. So it's like a full package thing.
And do they vary in size, or are they a fairly standard size?
So they're all about 1.5 to 2 meters in diameter. So they're all quite similar size. But some households will have one, and other ones, I think that one of them had about 7. So you can have as many as you want, really.
And I guess it depends on land ownership, does it? I mean, you've got to have the space, presumably you've got to have the type of household that can have this relatively near the house, I'm guessing.
Certainly, yeah. So they're all pretty much within 10 meters of their house. But a lot of people do have that space to do it. They might not have a lot of space, but most households will be able to accommodate sort of like a 2 meter radius for a keyhole garden to go in.
And are they fairly productive? I mean, that's not a huge amount of space, is it?
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a lot, does it? A 2 meter circle. But no, they can really produce quite a bit. Unfortunately, one of my research questions wasn't how much it could produce. I would like to have done it, but I think that would have meant I'd have to be out there for a lot more time to be able to actually monitor what people are pulling out of the keyhole garden. Maybe in the future I'll get a 6-month break to go out there. That'll be all right, so wouldn't it?
It wouldn't be too bad, would it? So how long did you spend out there originally?
So I did 3 weeks out there, and that was 2 weeks of volunteering and research collection. And then the final week was more travelling around and seeing Lesotho and South Africa.
Nice. So one of the questions you did ask was, what are people growing in them? So was there a pattern that emerged around the typical sort of produce that was coming out of them?
Yeah, so we had quite varied sort of responses to that question. So things like we had lots of carrots, lots of beetroot, spinach, onions. Some people were growing oilseed rape, which was interesting. Mustard, tomatoes, cabbage, chilies, pepper, radish, beans, garlic, and potatoes.
Were people picking what crops they were growing because they were suited to the site, or was it because they were sort of high nutrition or calorie, or was it a mixture of the both?
It was a mixture of the both, really. One person did mention that they grew spinach and beetroot because of the nutrient qualities within them. I think that comes from what the development trust out there and sort of their education and their training, which is then gets spread out to the people with the keyhole garden. So then they understand, actually, yeah, the different things I grow can lead to different benefits and a more balanced diet. So I think that's why you get such a range, which is really good to see.
Yeah, it is. It's really good. So thinking about growing for nutrition and stuff, I'm guessing that food security is an issue there for most people. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it is a big problem out there, and it needs improving and it needs addressing. But it is such a difficult climate, and just the like topography of the land, like it's the highest country in the world. I think every single part of Lesotho is above 1,400 meters. So it's a really mountainous country.
Yeah, and I think it said in your dissertation 85% of their food is imported, which, given the sort of pressures globally, is probably not a great position to be in if you are looking for food security, is it?
Yeah, I think it was 85% that is imported from South Africa, which is their only neighbour. So they're really, really super reliant on other countries for their food imports, which is, yeah, it's always risky to be like that. So the more things in place like keyhole gardens that households can use, it just strengthens that food security on a household level.
And in terms of growing on site, near your house, again, it's not unproblematic, is it? So it's going to solve a lot of problems, but I'm guessing there are problems that come along with trying to grow, especially if you're in a harsh environment. What are some of the barriers to growing?
And a lot of people said pests. the pests were still a problem. And they would show me these bugs there, and they were huge. They were like almost the size of my palm of my hand. They were huge that would eat and sort of devastate their crops. So they have these, like over here we have shade netting, don't we, in like nurseries and stuff like that.
Mm.
So they would use that over the top of their keyhole garden. And that was a very good way of helping to reduce pests getting in there, bugs and all sorts. And then also that would help with reducing sort of the amount of sunlight. So it just diffused the sunlight a bit more. So it wasn't so harsh. And also when it rained heavily and there was hail, it also protected it. So the shade netting is a big improvement. Water as well. The keyhole garden is so good at retaining water. However, you do need some water for it to be able to be retained. So that was also a problem that came up. A few people surprisingly said like livestock damage. Animals would come onto their land by mistake and it would start eating away at their keyhole garden. And I said, how do you combat that? And a few people said you just have to go up to the farmer and tell them off. Some people said like maintenance, sort of keeping on top of the keyhole garden, but it's very low maintenance keyhole garden. It's not much you have to do to it. Well, I think there's a study out there that says that I think about 7 years or 8 years, the nutrients sort of kind of drop off a little bit, which is not bad going, I think. To have 8 years of high nutritional soil, I think even then you can just sort of strip it all back and sort of rebuild.
Mm.
One person very interestingly mentioned climate change. It felt like climate change was becoming an increasing problem. It's led to like harsher weather.
But talking about the proximity of the growing space and the scale of it, I'm guessing it's easier if you have people. And again, I don't think this is for your next project, obviously, but I think that it was assumed that it was probably a really efficient way of growing if you are time poor. And also there's the issue that if you're not that mobile, it's quite a good system, a manageable system and an accessible system. So it's probably got benefits on that front, I imagine.
Yeah, it's in such close proximity to your house that you don't need to travel far at all. The only barrier is sort of like building it, but with sort of the development trusts and stuff, there are things in place, there's support systems in place that will help you build them. So if they know that you might struggle to walk or you're disabled, there's definitely help about to help you build it. And once you've built it, it's quite easy to keep on top of and grow stuff. And the big thing about keyhole gardens that I found out that it sort of brings the community a lot closer, because community is already a huge thing in Lesotho, especially in the Malaya Valley where I was. And it just felt like the keyhole gardens almost brought it even tighter. So a lot of people would share their produce with their neighbours and stuff like that, and like knowledge sharing as well, which is quite interesting. So problems that some people have, they would talk to others about that, and it almost like brought people together even more, which I thought was a really good benefit of a keyhole garden, which might not be obvious on paper.
Yeah, and I guess people see them and think, oh, that looks like a good idea, and then that helps adoption. Have you got any idea, if you were to go to a particular village, for example, how many people might have them? What percentage of the households would have had them?
That's a question, Sarah. I want to say 50%, but I could be totally wrong on that.
Oh, that's quite high, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I saw a lot, but I did also see a lot of places that could have had them that didn't. So, yeah.
Are they replacing another method of growing, or are they supplementing another system that's in use?
That's the thing. I've got to be very careful when I write my dissertation to make sure that this is not a replacement for like open field crop growing. Farmers aren't going to be out of business because of keyhole gardens. And in terms of, has it replaced something else that came before it? I didn't see anything that it replaced, and I've not really read about anything that it replaced. I might be wrong on that, but to me, this seems like quite a good new initiative method to grow crops on a household level. And it's meant to be like a supplementary sort of initiative. So you add to what you're going to buy from the shops, or you have to now buy less from the shops because you can supplement a lot of that stuff with the keyhole garden. So it's not like a one fit thing.
When you were speaking, it made me think about the potential for scaling it up. So if you had, I don't know, a school or something, could you potentially put a bigger one in?
Certainly, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they seem to have a lot of potential.
It might be quite key about the size of it and the size of that composting basket in the middle. Because obviously if you go too big, then the stuff you put in the middle of the water won't reach far out.
Right. Yeah.
So I think if it's kept at that sort of size, that might be like the optimum size. And the way to get around it would just be to have multiple. But definitely, I think if schools had them, I think they're very good educational tools, really. I think even in the UK, you could have them. I know the guy went out to Africa with Ken. He lives in Doncaster and he has one in his garden in Doncaster, which is quite cool to think that they have them in Lesotho, but there's also one in Doncaster.
Well, that was going to be my next question, actually. Is there potential to roll this out? Is it a sensible growing method that we should be exploring? Because let's face it, we might not be quite Lesotho levels of extreme climate, but we're all looking at ways to reduce water use. And there's some areas with impoverished soils that could be used for growing and for crops and stuff. Is this a good option, globally?
Yeah, whether you live in Lesotho or sub-Saharan Africa or parts of Asia that are extremely hot and where water scarcity is a big thing. We don't have that so much in the UK. But even now we get hosepipe bans and trying to water your garden in summer is getting more difficult. So I think it's really important that, we do have to look at methods. Can we grow stuff? Especially because loads of people grow fruit and veg over here. And in the summer, you need to keep on top of watering. So to have methods like this that work in extreme environments, I think definitely we can learn from Keyhole Gardens and how other countries sort of combat their climate problems. So it might take off over here.
It might do. I mean, I'm guessing we can't all descend on Ken's garden to see it in action, but is there any way you can see examples of them? And I'm thinking as well, like the technical, how you'd construct them. Is there any examples online, maybe?
I'm sure Ken would love a massive garden party with all your listeners, Sarah. But I think online, there's stuff on YouTube. There's stuff written about it online as well. And people can read my dissertation if they want, Sarah.
Can they? Well, good, because I was going to ask that as well.
I'll have to publish it first.
Also, I was thinking about applications more widely, and it does sound, and you do touch on this in the dissertation, that it's a really good way of recycling and not sending stuff to landfill or using wastewater as well. So it just seems like a really, really clever way of growing that's just like a closed loop.
Absolutely. And a phrase that I use a lot was like multi-dimensional benefits. Having a keyhole garden doesn't just mean you have more crops, more food, more veg. It's actually so many other benefits come from having a keyhole garden other than just food. That needs to be measured. And I try to do that in my research as best as I could, but it's really hard. So like when you've only got so many words you can write about, but there's so many benefits to keyhole gardens, and that's an important factor, I think.
Yes, I feel like we need a book, Sam.
Maybe Ken could write a book. You won't know who Ken is, will you? And I keep banging on about it.
Well, we already love Ken.
Ken, he's an MBE.
Oh.
Kenneth Dunn, and he runs a charity called Africa's Gift, and also has Eco Cook Bags as well, which is another charity. And he does a lot of work in Africa.
Feels quite exciting because, like you say, it's not hugely well known, but it's got so much potential. So, I'm excited to see if anyone listening actually establishes one. And, I feel there could be a movement here.
I mean, I often think about building one in my own garden.
Well, I feel you should, really. Yeah.
I did build one out in Lesotho, part of the teaching farm out there. I built one, but it wasn't a proper one. It was one that we put a perspex front on it. And that was to show people in the area and also visitors of the charity, of when they come, they can actually see how one works and, all different layers in the keyhole garden. So that was quite interesting to build. And then a few weeks later, after I'd left, the king of Lesotho, he actually came to visit and he visited my work. I don't know if he knew it was my work, but Ken obviously explained about the keyhole garden and stuff. So there's a photo with the king of Lesotho and the keyhole garden that I've built, which is quite a cool photo.
Thanks for listening, and thanks to Sam for highlighting Keyhole Gardens. If today's episode resonated with you, you might also enjoy episode 23, Isaiah Levy's Seed Share Project, and episode 185, Food Forests for Plant Lovers. You'll find links to both in the show notes, and as always, thank you for listening. Next up is Benny with his Insect of the Week.
The four-banded flower bee. Scientific name, Anthophora quadrimaculata. This week's insect of the week is another flower bee. You may well remember the hairy-footed flower bee, Anthophora plumipes. Now, that species is one of the first kind of iconic solitary bees to emerge in the UK and Ireland. And that species is now sadly coming to the end of its season. There's still a few bedraggled bees trying to complete their season, but they're really, really right at the end now, at the time of recording, kind of towards the end of May now. The four-banded flower bee is absolutely stunning. It's got 4 kind of bands of hair on the abdomen, on the lower half. It's got green eyes, which are kind of really beautiful, and they're present on the bee in all stages whilst it's alive. There's another species that's very closely related that's just going to be coming out soon, called the green-eyed flower bee, Anthophora bimaculata. These two can be conflated. They have slightly different kind of preferences for nesting, but confusingly, they can occasionally be found in the same spaces, in the same aggregations almost. So the green-eyed flower bee is a sandy ground preferrer. The four-banded flower bee, which I'm talking about today, that can be found in free draining ground, or it can also nest in masonry. So you have to really be careful with the identification. I've definitely made a mistake or two with this one in the past. The bee I'm talking about today is generally found in the southern half of the UK. There are no records that I could see in Ireland or the northern half of the UK and Scotland. So at the minute, it's located mostly in the southern half of the UK. With the climate shifting and moving, it may well push up and up. So we will see about that. It's a really, really cool species. I haven't mentioned the etymology yet. We've discussed Anthophora before, which is the Greek for flower bearer or flower carrier. And the epithet, the second part of the scientific name, quadrimaculata, which means 4-spotted. That relates to the hair bands on the abdomen. So really cool. It says in the literature it's around from June to mid-August, this species, but we've been seeing it in the last few weeks in London. So it's kind of this year, at least mid-May. So keep an eye out for it. The plants that the female will collect pollen from are typically in the Lamiaceae, the mint family. So Nepetas are really, really good for this kind of bee. Black horehound, another one. Dead nettles, that kind of ilk of plant. I am seeing them on echiums at the minute quite a bit as well. So especially Echium pininana, the tree echiums. Not sure if they're pollen collecting or just drinking nectar off those, but they are present on those in sunny moments. It's a really, really stunning bee. I will be posting an image of this on Instagram so you can see what it looks like, but try and keep your eyes peeled for this one. It's the next flower bee to follow on from the hairy-footed flower bee. As always, please record any sightings on the iRecord or iNaturalist app and tag me in any sightings, please.
You can download or listen to the podcast direct from the website rootsandall.co.uk. Please also check out my Patreon, where you can make a one-off donation or take out a monthly subscription to help support the podcast. Because if you enjoy the show, please help it continue. I also have a GoFundMe where you can make a one-off donation. Even a one-off donation of £1 helps, and I'll be really grateful for your support. So please go to Patreon or GoFundMe and search for Roots and All Podcast.